Hello, my friends. Namaste. Today's topic is, did Michel Gauquelin prove astrology? What exactly did Michel Gauquelin discover about astrology? Well, first let's start off by summarizing what Michel Gauquelin did. He collected birth data of famous actors, sports champions, military, politicians, scientists, musicians, painters, and other groups. These are the groups that are most often used. Um, he collected this data from their birth records, which he was able to obtain from people who were listed as being notable people in their fields. And what he claims he discovered is that in the birth chart at the time an actor was born, in the birth chart of an actor, Jupiter was in these sensitive areas, or plus zones, which I will describe in a minute. Sports and military people had Mars in those parts of the sky, sections of the sky that he claimed would be sensitive to these planets. So athletic people, military people, which astrologically are associated with the planet Mars, did indeed have the planet Mars. In those sensitive areas, military people also had Jupiter. Politicians, like actors, had Jupiter, but politicians also have the moon, and so on. Scientists have Mars and Saturn, but do not have Jupiter. Minus means Jupiter tends to be low. So we get you might say a signature, a cosmic, what would you call it? I'm stumbling for words. A cosmic signature in the sky for each profession. So painters are strong in Venus and weak in Mars. Now these critical areas are basically the areas in the sky just after the planet rises and then just after culmination. I'm not going to get into describing that, but planets rise once a day just like the sun does, and just after they rise is a hot spot where sports champions and military would have Mars. Okay, so the findings are elegant. It's a beautiful, simple, direct information, and so it's impressive. It's impressive if this really occurs. Okay, so the Gauquelin research is often cited as the best proof of astrology, that astrology actually works, it produces measurable effects. And keep in mind that some astrologers don't think proof of astrology is the most important thing in the world, but nevertheless, Gauquelin claims to have done it. He's shown that astrology actually works. I'm going to skip over some of the information on these slides. This presentation I'm giving to you today is adapted from a presentation that I gave at a conference, the United Astrology Conference in 2012 in New Orleans. I'm skipping some of the detail, but I'm adding in some additional information that was not covered when I gave the lecture. Now, the Gauquelin research, well, I'm going to skip this other than to say that if you're trying to prove something, replication is a gold standard in research. You need to find something, state your hypothesis, and repeat it again. So these are all issues about whether Gauquelin really discovered anything. And so how good is Gauquelin's finding? What I did is I actually looked at the data. I have the data. I looked at it. I looked at what he did. I used modern methods, data mining methods, to see what he did. And the answer is that his results are good. They're not great, as we will see. We'll also find that there are other astrological factors besides what Gauquelin found that are important. Now here is what Gauquelin found. I took his data and I plotted it to see what he found. And after plotting for 5 professions, actors, painters, musicians, scientists, sports champions, so the actors are this light blue going like this, and up and down, and so what Gauquelin is saying is that this area here, where I've got this gray rectangle, and this area here are where certain professions should have higher values. More of people in certain professions should have that planet. Now this is for Mars. This is the graph of Mars for 5 professions. And the red are the sports champions. The pink are the scientists. And sure enough, as Gauquelin stated, there are the sports champions, red, peaking very high, coming down, peaking again in this area, and then not peaking again. And the pink, which are the scientists, high, comes down, peaks again right there. So very good. We confirmed what Gauquelin said, that sports champions and scientists have Mars more often in those areas than the other professions. So the graph is a good way to visualize and see what's going on. So far, so good. We have replicated what Gauquelin said he found, and there it is. Now, what I want to show you that I did not show in the lecture that I gave in 2012 is how I produced this information. So I'm going to show you that. What I did is I ran the Sirius software. This is the Sirius Astrology software. I've got a pretty chart wheel here just to keep you awake. We're not going to use that. We're going to go right into the research. So I click on this research icon, and it shows me all these different kinds of research that you can do. And the way that I produced this graph, let me go back to it. Over here. The way that I produced this graph, how did I do it? All I did is I ran Sirius. I selected produce data for statistics software. Now I could have gone into specific astrofactors and selected this option to see planets and houses in Gauquelin sectors, and I can click on this Gauquelin sector and I could see them that way. But that would not allow me to overlay, as I have here, 5 professions all in one graph. In order to do that, what I did instead of using this feature to see the Gauquelin sectors is I used this feature to produce data for statistics software. And I clicked on that, and I get 2 choices. Well, I want to do individual charts. I'm not doing compatibility. And I have Gauquelin sectors here. So I can output the Gauquelin sector information to a file, and I can read it into a statistics program. And that's what I did. So I'm just showing you how the research was conducted. By understanding this, you can see how professional level or academic level research is done. And so these are the tools. This is called an ID field here, called Group 1. Well, I'm not going to discuss that. That's if you're doing a statistical comparison of groups. You could call one Group 1, and then you run it again. You can call Group 2, and now you can separate your groups by that identification. But basically, I'm going to output the data. I click on Save Data, and it saves the file. And the default name is just called mydata.csv. Now, if I click on that and I run it, I'm not going to do all that. It takes a little while to run. I would get this file. And what it does is for each person, this is the one I ran for actors. Oh, let me show you. Let me go back. You select the category you want to output. Here I've got sports champions. I can change the category, select a more specific category. I could say give me actors, and then give me the actor or actress from Gauquelin data collection. Click OK, and now I'm doing the Gauquelin data. The actors collected by Gauquelin, I would save this to something like Gauquelin actors or whatever I want to call it, and save it. So I ran this analysis for each of those 5 groups. I ran it 5 times, once for each group, and I have 5 files that look like what I just showed you, which is this. This is the one for actors. So this tells me how often Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto were in each of the Gauquelin sectors for each person. Or actually, it's more specific than that. What it's telling me is that for this actor, with this, I happen to have his name here, This is tells me it's a Julian day. I'm not using that. 13, his sun is in sector 13. His moon is in sector 36. His Mercury is in sector 16. His Venus in sector 11. So this is the header, we call it, or first line of the file that tells us what the information is. It's what's called a comma delimited file. So there it is, this specific details for all that information. Then I read this into a statistics program to analyze it and produce the graphs. And I will show you that. The statistics program I used is called R. Just the letter R, like the letter in the alphabet. And I'm actually running something called R Studio, which is a user interface for the R program. The R program is a professional, academic level statistics software used in very sophisticated research. It's used in research that appears in academic journals. So you might think that this very, very extensive and sophisticated software must be expensive. It's free, can you imagine that? So you can download it, put it on your computer, and then you write the code. In this case, I have code already written, and you could just run it. So I wrote this program in R to do the analysis. And what you do in R is you have these lines of code, and if you want, you can just highlight those and you click on Run, and then down here it shows you the results. And these are the files that I created. I created these files. I named it actor, gawk, sector, all.csv, and painters and musicians. And then I have this code, whoops, scroll too far, and I could highlight all of this. And this does the loop to calculate the totals. This makes pretty colors. This does the loop to produce the graphs. I can highlight all that, click on Run, and down here it runs it all, and it finished. And what it did is it created those files using this plot command. With this PNG command, I tell it to save to file automatically. And then I can use the Paint program to read that in, and there's the graph produced. That is the same exact graph I'm showing you in my PowerPoint. There it is. There's the graph, and there's the one I created using the R software, which reads in the files that I saved with Sirius. Now, if that has overwhelmed you and blown your mind because you're not used to dealing with that level of detail, don't worry about it. I just wanted to give you an idea of how this kind of sophisticated research is actually done. It's actually not that complicated. All I'm saying is I clicked on an option in Sirius to save the results, and then it's read in and analyzed in R. And you don't really have to know anything about R. Once someone creates the R code, or sometimes called an R script, that could be emailed to you. You can save it and read it into R and just run it. It's fantastic. So there you go. And nice thing about R is because it's so sophisticated, you can do all kinds of wonderful things like overlay 5 of these graphs on top of each other. Okay, so that's how the research is done. Let's continue with our story. Picking up with what I was saying before, here are the results from Mars for the 5 groups. Exactly what Gauquelin said, looks beautiful. Let's see if the other results look just as good. Here are the results for Venus. So Venus, if we go back to that table, where's my table? There it is. This is copied from a book by Ertel and Irving, written in 1996. Okay, Venus should be high for musicians and painters. It's not low for anybody. So we should see it high for musicians and painters. So I scroll back down. Venus, musicians are purple, painters are blue. Here's my purple, yep, high. Staying low, pretty high, but also high here and even higher up here. Well, I don't know. It's kind of fits. The blue, let's see, the purple was the musicians. Wait, am I getting this right? I'm just getting confused here. The Venus should be high for musicians and painters, correct. So, musicians, kind of high, but then somewhat low. Not too bad. Painters are blue, but blue is kind of low through these three values. High, low, still fairly low. Kind of low, then high. Not as obvious and clear as I would like to be so sure. And furthermore, why are the scientists the highest? Scientists are coming out very high. The pink are the scientists. They're at the top of this thing. Also high are the red sports champions in the first sector. So it's really not, when I look at this, I'm just not that impressed, frankly. I mean, musicians are lower. Here's musicians going way down. And up here are the scientists. So just graphically, it doesn't look like what I had hoped to see. So Gauquelin's, his own findings, even without trying to replicate, just taking the data that he has and looking at it, it's not that impressive with Venus. It was impressive with Mars, but not Venus. So visual tools are extremely important. Before we worry about doing statistical analysis, we want to make friends with the data and look at what we're finding. Here's Saturn. Saturn is supposed to be high for scientists, which is pink. True. Pink high, pink high. So that works well. Scientists are highest. So that does work. Jupiter. And let's go back up to our table. Hope I'm not making you dizzy by scrolling around here, but here's Jupiter. Supposed to be high for three groups: actors, military, politicians. And actors, it's the only thing. For politicians, it's Moon and Jupiter. Military, Mars and Jupiter. So actors, military, and politicians, and actors, it's the only planet. So we go down to Jupiter. Actors are the light blue, and it works. It's high. There it is for the light blue. Pretty high. So overall, the findings that he states work reasonably well. Venus doesn't seem to work, but the Jupiter is high for actors. For sports champions, which are this reddish color, yep, kind of high there. Kind of medium here, though. So the theme is not extremely clear. It is clear for the actors. Might have been better if he just said Jupiter was high for actors. It's basically what we're finding here. Now, what else? Neptune. Interestingly, we can look at other planets besides the ones that Gauquelin did. And we see here the light blue is among the highest of the colors, which is actors. So we could have said actors are high in Jupiter and Neptune. Why not? There's only one other group here, the scientists, which come in higher. But overall, light blue is among the highest. So what we're seeing is the Gauquelin results are not dramatic. They're not crystal clear. You do see a tendency for Mars to be higher for the groups that it should be higher for. We do see Saturn tending to be higher for the scientists. Jupiter does tend to be higher for actors. It's not dramatic. It's not, standing out extremely clearly. And we could make arguments for other planets, even though Gauquelin said they're not higher. Here again we see Pluto, very high, clearly high here, and also among the highest here. High, just kind of middle, up near the top again. So we could say Pluto with sports champions. I'm not sure why Gauquelin said Mars for sports champions. He could have said Mars and Pluto. When we look at the data, that seems to be clear. So the idea that only those planets worked is not really true. Gauquelin said the outer planets didn't really relate, we can see that they actually did. Then we can do statistical analysis. I won't get into all this, what are called pairwise comparisons, and we can see how good the results are. And what we find out is that, there are fairly good statistical significance. We find that the Gauquelin sectors properly classify the professions as expected, except that musicians and painters cannot be distinguished from each other. So from a statistical point of view, those should have been put together as one group. Now we can also look at this Gauquelin data using some of the modern methods of research, known as data mining or knowledge discovery. And we can see from the point of view of data mining whether Gauquelin's the Gauquelin sectors are what we call good classifiers. So we can analyze this data in various ways. And the different perspectives, if we analyze it with data mining, or we analyze it with t-tests, or however we do it, should come up with similar findings. One of the things is that according to research, there are certain criteria that we would want. We would want a simple formula, according to Sam Ruiz, a professor and data mining expert. This is one of the big things. So, going back to the original astro signature, what we really want to see is that all the planets working. And what we find out is that basically in the pairwise comparisons, there's fairly good results, but not extremely impressive. The main one that stands out is Mars. And then I also did analysis of harmonic aspects, and we find out that harmonics are just as good, actually better classifiers than the Gauquelin sectors. And there is some consistency. Sun and Saturn appear in different harmonics for each profession. So Sun and Saturn for painters are in harmonics 5, 10, 20, and 25, harmonics based on 5. For musicians, they're harmonics based on 11. For actors, the 17th harmonic, and so on. So each group, scientists, 7 based harmonics. So each group has certain harmonics between Sun and Saturn and other planets that show up. I'm not going to go into all the specific and details of the finding, but I just want to give you an overview of what was found out. What we found out by doing this research is, did Gauquelin prove astrology? The answer is no. The results are not crystal clear, they're not consistent. Venus is not particularly high for the groups that he said it was high for. Mars is high for the groups that he said it would be high for. Saturn was high for the scientists. They're not tremendously higher, they're only slightly higher, and just barely statistically significant with large groups. Without having the clear influence of Venus and the statistical significance, when we did the comparisons, we don't get the consistent, simple formula that Gauquelin claimed to have found. So I would say the results are interesting, they're promising, they're showing some good lines of research, they are not definitive. That's what we find out by graphing and analyzing what he found out. And the harmonics produced findings that are just as impressive and interesting as Gauquelin's in terms of consistency and significance. Now, Gauquelin claims to have been able to replicate the findings, and if he did, then that would be hugely impressive. Unfortunately, I was not able to find the Gauquelin data as separated out clearly in terms of what he replicated and what he did earlier. That data seems to have all gotten mixed together, and so we weren't able to verify that. Okay, so this is a summary of the results. and we got good results for both the harmonic analysis and using the Gauquelin sectors, and some advantage to each of those methods in terms of the analysis that was done. Okay, so I won't do the rest of these slides. These are just ideas that I presented in the lecture, and ideas for future research. Okay, so the conclusions and discussion is that the Gauquelin sectors and harmonic aspects show promise of being able to demonstrate measurable astrological effects. Further research is needed. Number two, whether astrology can actually produce measurable effects is highly controversial. And number three, although people have strong opinions, I think that to a large extent more important than debate is to continue the research to find out if measurable effects can be found. So the closing statement I want to make is that using the Sirius software combined with the R statistical package, instead of just arguing and debating and saying, oh, the scientists, who analyze this, the skeptical groups were not ethical, and so on, and going over and debating, and to a large extent that's true. It's nice to go and look at the data more carefully to actually see what happened. And regardless of all the politics and confusion and complexities of that research, just looking at the data, we can see that it's clear that Gauquelin did not prove anything. He did find some very interesting results, and perhaps the greatest contribution of Gauquelin was the data itself. That data is available to analyze, and we can see other things that are in that data, such as harmonic patterns and so on. And we can use new data mining methods to extract information out of it, which I did to find those harmonic patterns. We can use the new software, like the R software, to graph, see things, visualize things, and get a better understanding of what was available. At the time Gauquelin did this research, those tools were not available. So several points I wanted to make in this video. One is how good the Gauquelin data is and what it tells us. It tells us, some interesting things we can look at and verify in future research is what it did. We see the tools and ways that we can go about to do actual, real research in astrology. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you got something out of it. Take care. God bless. Namaste.